today we are working in Module 1, Lesson 7, and our objective today is to round decimal numbers. Our first step before we can begin rounding is to decompose our number. And so we'll take a look here. We'll begin decomposing this number by looking at our ones place. And in that ones place, we have 4 ones. And when we move on to our tenths place, we have 3 tenths. Now, in the next line of our chart, we're going to decompose this number with the maximum number of tenths that we can take out. So we don't want to look at our ones and how many ones we have. We just want to know what is the maximum number of tenths that I could take out of this number. And so we do have 4 ones here, and I know that 1 1 is equivalent to 10 tenths. So if I have 4 ones, that means that I have 40 tenths. I also have 3 tenths currently in my tenths place, so when I add my 40 tenths and my 3 tenths, that gives me 43 tenths. So I can essentially rename my number 4 and 3 tenths as 43 tenths. I can also do this with hundredths and see what the maximum number of hundredths that I can take out is. And so again, I have 4 ones. Now this time that we're looking at hundredths, we know that 1 1 is equal to 100 hundredths. That's the same thing. And so in this case, if I have 4 ones, that means that I have 400 hundredths. I also have 3 tenths, and 1 tenth is equivalent to 10 hundredths. So if I have 4 wholes, or 400 hundredths, and I have 3 tenths, or 30 hundredths, when I add those together, that gives me 430 hundredths, meaning that I can rename my number 4 and 3 tenths as 430 hundredths. Now our next step is to begin using our vertical number line to round. And so I can see here that I have 430 hundredths. That is going to be the base of my vertical number line. That will be my bottom. And I know that 430 hundredths can be written in standard form as 4 and 30 hundredths. Now the top of my vertical number line is going to be 431 hundredths, or written in standard form, 4 and 31 hundredths. Our next step is to find our midpoint. And to find our midpoint, we can go ahead and just extend out our base numbers a little bit, and that'll help us find our midpoint a little more easily. So I extended 4 and 30 hundredths out one place value, and it is now 4 and 300 thousandths. I did the same with 4 and 31 hundredths. I extended that to my thousandths place, and now I have 4 and 310 thousandths. This makes it a little easier to see what the midpoint is going to be. And so if you look here and you look at what is after the decimal, our 300 thousandths and our 310 thousandths, you can see that directly between those would be 305 thousandths. And so that will be our midpoint, 4 and 305 thousandths. That would be right in the center there. And now we can go ahead and just erase the thousandths down here at the bottom number and up at our top. That was just used to help us find our midpoint. Now we can see here the number that we began with was 4 and 3 tenths, or 430 hundredths. And we said that we can write that 430 hundredths as 4.30. And so if we look at our number line, that's actually right here down at the bottom. That's where we would place our number. And so I'll go ahead and I'll make a little mark here to show that that's where I would place that point. And we see that is already right at that lowest number on our vertical number line. And so we would not be rounding that number up. We would leave it right there at 4 and 30 hundredths. And so we would round that number to 4 and 30 hundredths. That's where that would stay. We would not round that up. And we'll continue to see this as we move forward and round our number 4 3/10 to a few different place values. So now we're going to go ahead and take the number 4 3/10. We're going to round that to the nearest tenth. And so you'll see here, I've already decomposed this number just as we had done on the previous page, or the previous portion of the video, and we have 43/10. And we know that 43/10 is equivalent to 4 3/10. And so that will be the bottom of my vertical number line. And up at the top, that end point here, I'm going to make it 44/10, or 4 4/10. And again, we need to go ahead and find our midpoint, so we can do this by extending out our endpoints just a tiny bit. And so we can see here now that we have 4 30 hundredths and 4 40 hundredths. So right there in the middle, we would have 4 35 hundredths. And we can go ahead and erase those extensions because those were just used to help us find that midpoint. And so now we see, again, in our chart that the number that we are beginning with is 4 3/10, or 43/10. And so we'll plot that on our vertical number line. And so I'll go ahead and plot that right here. And we can see that that is actually right at that end point. So we are just going to leave the number there. It would stay rounded to 4.3. We would not round that number up at all. This time we're going to take the number 4 3/10, and we're going to round it to the nearest 1. And so if we look at our chart here with our number that is decomposed, we can see that we have 4 1s. And so that will become our bottom end point, 4. Our top end point will become 5. And we can find our midpoint, again, by extending this out just one place value. So we have 4.0 and 5.0. Our midpoint is going to be 4.5. And we can erase these extensions here that helped us find that midpoint. All right. Now, our number, if we look here, that we began with is 4.3. And so if we look at our vertical number line, we'll see that 4.5 is right in the middle. So 4.3 would fall just a little bit below that. And so 4.3 would be somewhere around here, okay? And we can see that because our 4.3 is right about there, below our midpoint, we would round this number down to 4. And so we would round 4.3 to the nearest 1, and that would become 4. Again, this was Module 1, Lesson 7. Our objective was to round decimal numbers, and we did so using the aid of a vertical number line.